I want to talk with you guys for a few minutes, about something that seems to be adversely affecting a lot of people around the world right now. And I totally get it. I totally understand why. I want to first address it and then perhaps offer some solutions so that you are no longer burdened by the inundation of information from media sources, even if it's second or even third party information that you're getting. It's still adversely affecting you. It's like telephone, and you don't really know and or are deeply disconnected from the core of that truth, what's actually happening in that part of the world with those people. And so then it becomes just this emotionally charged domino effect. I'm talking about the media on what's happening around the world with wars, specifically the end of the Ukraine crisis, conundrum, we can perhaps call it. It's very complex, and it's been a long-standing development of geopolitical powers. But now we've got something new to all focus our attention upon, and that is what's happening in Gaza, the West Bank, in Israel. I've been there. I've traveled a tremendous amount. For those who don't yet know me, I've had the great privilege of traveling 65 countries over 26 years. So it's not just a dip in and dip out. A lot of these places I lived, worked, immersed myself, developed relationships with the people and the culture. And I've been to Israel, and I went just briefly to the West Bank as well. I gotta tell you, when I went out of Israel, it was very hard. It was a great challenge because I had made some friends with people on both sides. And I was highly interrogated to the point where I stripped down to my underwear and a full body scanner. They let me keep my socks on for whatever reason, but socks and underwear, full body scanner, interrogated for 3 hours, forced to miss a flight. And then I was walked with security to my plane with no shoes. They think they gave me some slippers. I didn't have my phone or my computer. I had no money, no way to access any until I landed in the US. They gave me all my stuff back. It was packed up. It was, like a checked-in bag. And I was given my passport and whatnot back only when I sat on the plane and the plane doors were closed. So I understand that their security is extremely tight. Simply me having a conversation with somebody on the other side. And I think that also comes from a long-standing history of geopolitical problems, complexity. Let's just say complexity. What we see on the news is often not exactly what's going on. It might be an overview. It might be a 10-second elevator pitch version of what's actually happening, but that is one maybe had been in development for 30, 40, 50 plus years, and or it's not just the sad scenario of one individual who lost their legs and their family, which is absolutely horrifying in every possible way. Yet, what I want to bring up here is a variety of things. One is that as emotionally evocative some of these stories might be, it's not necessarily the whole story, and moreover, it's not the story that most of the media actually wants you to know about. It's the story that they are distracting you with. Either they're developing an emotional campaign to get you emotionally charged so that once you are emotional, you're not thinking logically, you're not seeing the big picture, you're not actually seeing what's really happening, and therefore you are purposefully being focused, and all of your energy then subsequently is being focused into an area that's far away from the real big problem that they don't want you to know about, that might be causing far more human suffering. One of the things that I want to bring up before we get into any of the solutions is that there is a lot of human suffering happening around the world. Like I said, I've had the great privilege of traveling but I haven't seen the whole world, you know? I don't know exactly how many, probably around 200, 215 countries. It's always changing, it's always evolving, constantly shifting lines and changing infrastructure, merging with other places and or breaking down and being absolved by others or being just taken over, as we're seeing in real time. But there's a lot of countries in the world. A lot of them have their individual identity that makes it really hard for people outside to make sense of them, to connect in what feels like a human way. Sometimes it's just strictly they look really different than we do. And that's just part of our human condition. We are pattern recognition systems, and it's easy for us to identify those who look a lot like us and act similar in culture, but it becomes really hard to identify an individual that looks really different. I'm going to bring up some really hard, heavy points right now, some heavy stuff, okay? And I don't want to be scrutinized too terribly for this. This is strictly, a way in which to frame our minds so that you can understand what might be happening inside of yourself, so that you can be liberated from some of these heavy feelings and see the big picture and maybe actually make the changes we need to in the world so as to get out of this shitty situation collectively. And that is, often we have a hard time identifying, at least creating an emotional human connection to those who look very different than us. And it's not racist, this is just reality. If you travel a lot like I have, you start seeing people a little bit more so. But even when I first started, when I first went to, for instance, I went to Indonesia and I saw a bunch of guys holding hands with each other, I thought everybody was gay. And that's just the lens with which I had when I was 15 years old. I saw grown men holding hands and I was like, there's a lot of gay here. Not that I had a problem with it. That's what I saw, because I wasn't culturally associated enough. It wasn't integrated. I didn't see it for what it actually was. And even moreover, when I went to a place where everybody was dressed up in their traditional garb, going out to, let's say, a celebration or a religious event. So when I'd go out to a place where people are all dressed up in religious garb, maybe in a place of prayer, so they have head wraps and basically they're wearing a uniform, okay? They all look almost identical. It was extremely hard for my 15-year-old mind at the time, my first place going to some place that's radically different than the culture and the people with which I grew up in. Even though I grew up in an area where there's a very big cultural mixing pot of people, when you're in an area where everyone has very similar physiognomy, it's face shape, very similar skin tone, very similar eye structure, very similar body shape and size, and they're all wearing the same thing, it becomes really hard to see where my friend is. You know, it's like you almost see them 30, 40 times before you go, oh wait, there he is. You make some kind of minute association to an idiosyncrasy that they have. Or maybe they're smiling in a certain way that, oh wait, that's my friend, right? But this is a real thing that happens, pattern recognition systems. And when it comes to people that look very different than we do, especially for those who, I'm going to bring this up because it's something that for me, I think is one of the biggest issues that we need to at least become aware of and then maybe put some effort and energy into finding a resolution for, and that is some of the stuff that's happening in the Congo, in these cobalt mines, where there's millions of kids, people of all ages, but children, I'm talking about children, prepubescent children, that are being forced to work slave labor jobs, fingers to the bone. Sometimes these kids are worked so hard for so long. I mean, they start off with 4, 5, 6 years old. They're worked so hard for so long. Sorry, I'm getting emotional or passionate. I'm getting passionate. Is that they're working so much from such a young period of time that by the time they're 13, 14 years old, they still look like they're 7 or 8. Because they've been malnourished for so long that they haven't even hit puberty, they haven't developed in the right way, they have strange looking bodies, almost alien-like. Their skin is absolutely the darkest shade of black that's humanly possible for us to create in our pigment. They are dark, and they have strange shaped bodies because of malnutrition. And if you see an overshot picture of thousands of them working at the same time, it's almost impossible to pick one as an individual out. It looks like something CGI from a movie. And the reason I bring this up is because it's not to dehumanize in any way at all. Because I've been to places, not the Congo, but I've been to places in the world where I've seen things like this. And there's an emotional reaction I have and have had in the past where it's like, I got to do something to change it. If you create a connection with an individual, you start to see that as an individual. But I'm saying if you pull back and just look at it, as in what's happening in Gaza, you just pull back and you look at the before and after pictures of the devastation. It just kind of washes over your mind like these aren't individuals. You pull a pulled back picture of a mine where there's 70,000 people working and they all look almost identical to each other, from malnourishment, from physiology, and the type of clothes they're wearing. They almost look identical, and they're radically different than what you and I look like. And I'm bringing this up for a reason, because the people in the West are the ones that seem to be getting all upset and putting a lot of energy into feeling emotionally charged towards a very particular topic or issue that's happening in the world, whether that's Gaza or otherwise. Whether it was Ukraine before that, or whether it was COVID before that. Something happened where it's like, I get it. These are your people. These are your friends, your family, people that you can identify and connect with. However, there's a bunch of other things happening in the world that's bigger, that the people that are making and manufacturing these wars don't want you to know about. They don't want you to look there. They're purposefully getting you to look over here at the one girl that looks like you, because they know that's going to cause an emotional reaction, so that you focus over there, while they do something over here with 8 million children. They say a kid every 10 minutes is dying or something like that in Gaza. That's horrible, and it should stop immediately. However, what's happening in the Congo? What's happening in other parts of the world for the last 20, 30 years, where there's silicon mine or cobalt mine or whatever else that's going on, that's being controlled by the same industrialized complexes that are megalomaniacally creating new wars for profit, that are constantly playing this game of war, moving the chess pieces around. Each of those chess pieces is a community, thousands of people, maybe a country, maybe an entire culture. Playing the game of war, they're not taking into consideration that pawn they're moving up as a method of distraction against what's going on over here that they don't want you to know about. That's their true angle of attack. That's their true agenda. They move this pawn up here so that you get distracted. It's a very complex game. I don't like to minimize human experience and life and the tremendous amount of suffering that's happening in the world down to a game board piece. I do so to simplify the complexity that's happening in the world. Because if we were to collectively widen our gaze, and how about this? If you become emotionally charged, and if you feel emotionally charged right now about a particular issue and or from maybe an experience that you've seen somebody having as a result of these wars that either looks like you or doesn't, but you have this emotional charge about this experience. If you're feeling that desire for change, like this needs to stop now, well, the best way to do that is to understand what's actually happening. And the only way to do that is to pull back from that emotionally charged individual experience. Now, you can use that emotional charge, but pull back for a moment and try to see what's really going on. Because putting your effort and energy into the direction that they want you to is just going to keep perpetuating these problems. Putting that energy into yourself first, creating the strongest version of yourself possible, creating a strong family unit base, creating a strong community, creating the strongest community that you can possibly have that reinforces values, which then can collectively come together with all of this shared knowledge, interest in a communal goal, actually make changes that we need to see in the world. yes, it does start with ourselves. First, the first thing we need to do is to just pull back. Just pull back for a second. Because when you're in an emotional state, the world becomes really small. And you can only focus on this tiny little thing that's happening right now. It's one of the reasons why, for many, many years, past 70 plus years now, there's been a financial system that has been keeping you in a state of perpetually working a little bit more, a little bit harder, where the amount of time in our day, our collective average human life, has been breaking down, has been minimizing, has been becoming smaller and smaller. Meaning that if we have less time in our day to actually think and feel for ourselves, to actually ponder, consider, contemplate, ruminate, meditate, then the only time that we have, or the only information that we're getting, is from the outside. So if we're working so hard just to pay bills for stuff that we probably don't actually need, but even if it's just bare bone necessities, because prices are 2-3 times what they used to be, and I get it, it's tight, it's tough, it's hard. So we just have less time. Less time in our day means that we have less ability to look inward, less ability to pull back and say, okay, wait a second, I'm being emotionally charged in this direction because of somebody else's agenda. Maybe there's an agenda that's not my own. So that's the very first thing that we need to do. That's the very first thing that I suggest you do if you're feeling, especially right now, if you're feeling overwhelmed in your life, if everything is just so intense, and you get on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube or X, which is just replete with hyper polarized, emotionally charged experiences. If you feel like that, one of the things you can do is you can just stop watching it for a period of time. And you pull back, you start thinking about some of the things that I brought up here. You give yourself, instead of the 30 minutes or 20 minutes of your lunch break or after work, whatever else, instead of in between sets at the gym, instead of scrolling through all that stuff and giving yourself a cortisol attack, try listening to some chill music, try doing a little meditation, try feeling your body, taking some deep, long, slow breaths, and coming back to a state where you can actually feel for yourself, so you can think for yourself. Once we reduce the amount of hypercharge that we have, or when we're hypercharged, we are in a reactionary state. Once we reduce the amount of hypercharge that we have, then we can really start to think and feel and process in a more harmonious way. I mean, not just harmony with our own body's desire to not have so many ups and downs, not feel so stressed all the time, but harmony with other people, with our environment. And then we can begin to co-create through conversation ways that we can actually or actualize the changes that we all want to see in the world. What are the changes that we want to see? Well, I think most people want to see an end to war. We don't need to have wars. Everybody knows that. Right? The people that have been playing the game of war for a long time, they don't know that, because if you've ever played a video game, you know what it's like to play the video game. You gotta tap, 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 tap every fucking microsecond. You gotta be aware of distances, distant sounds, and little movements and all kinds of stuff. You have to be preeminatory, otherwise you're gonna lose. And people who are playing the game of war are purposefully preemanating these experiences. It's almost like manifest destiny. They're creating more drama and more chaos in the world so that they can have more war, more game, more playtime, because they don't know anything else. They are completely isolated in this ideology and this belief system. They're playing a game. They don't know they're playing a game. And if we all want this human suffering to stop, if we want to really reach the next state of our human potential, that what I think might be, human 2.0. And this isn't merging with computers. I'm talking about human 2.0 and our potential once we alleviate all of the unnecessary stresses of life, like needing to worry about a school shooting or war happening, somebody dropping a bomb, or nuclear war. I mean, come on. This should be a non-conversation. War can be taken out of our conversation as humans. We have the ability, we have the capacity, and it all starts within us as individuals. And it has to, because so long as we are in a reactionary state, whether it's looking at something that causes that reaction, then wanting to go and, I'm angry. Fine, you can use anger. It's one of the base level emotions to use. I'd prefer to use love and excitement over something over anger. But if all you know is anger, you can use anger to get you into a state of action. But once you're in a state of action, I welcome you to pull back. Do the best you can to pull other people back from anger. Hey, now that you're awake, great. But now you got to pull back. Develop some self-control, some self-mastery, because that's how we move forward. That's how we become better. I'm gonna leave it like that for now. We got some construction in the distance. It's evidently a very busy day around here, and it's a lot of information. So thank you guys for participating. And obviously this is a co-creation, so I want to hear from you guys in the comments. I want to hear what you guys are thinking about this topic, what you think might be the best way to move forward. And maybe throughout some dialogue, you might find that there's some other people with whom you can either have like-minded or non-like-minded conversations with that open up new doors of thought and new opportunities for connection, co-creation. And so I look forward to getting to know you guys in the comments.